Hi there. Welcome to the Sober Circle channel. Enjoy this speaker tape.
We're going. I want to write down what time it is because it's almost impossible to know where you've been if you don't know where you started from. But don't get your hopes up. That don't mean anything that I took note of the time. You're already shot with the loss of an hour for the night. So what difference does it make how long I talk, really? I mean, the night's gone to begin with. I want to thank the committee or anybody that had anything to do with me being asked to come here tonight. I know for sure that all those people that stood up didn't approve it. You never get that many people together that had heard it that would agree on it. And I think, I'm not really sure, but I believe that Harriet referred to Dave as God this afternoon. And of course all my contacts have been with God, so I guess I really should extend a special thanks to God. He never really calls me up and asks me if I'll come any place. He calls me up and tells me that I am coming and when I'm supposed to come and what plane I'm supposed to go on, when I'm going to talk and when I'm going home. But I want to tell you that I listening to Harriet particularly, I got the impression that she's my kind of drunk too, you know. That gal really has got an imagination, and I think that having an imagination and the capacity to have heroes like Dennis did last night, you know, this is part of being an alcoholic. And just as long as I can remember, I wanted to come to Blackstone. I really and truly have. So many of the people that were so important in my early sobriety came from here, and it just has been a dream of mine, and I want to thank you for making it possible. So now we'll go down the regular right. Hi, everybody. My name is Tom, and I'm an alcoholic. My name is Tom. I'm an alcoholic and a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. And if you're going to be an alcoholic, that's the best kind of alcoholic to be, is a member of the fellowship, because if you're going to be an alcoholic outside, it gets kind of cold and the winds blow hard every once in a while. They blow hard in here sometimes, as far as that goes, but and in here when they ain't blowing hot, a lot of times they're blowing hot. But anyway, I'm glad I'm an alcoholic. Now, I'm not trying to start any controversy, but I say I'm glad I'm an alcoholic for the same reason that I'm glad that I got brown eyes. Are you trying to give me a signal? My voice is too damn loud, isn't it? I got invited to a birthday anniversary of a group one time in Meridian, Mississippi, for the sole reason that they didn't have any loudspeaker system. And I was the only guy they knew offhand that didn't need one. But now when I get into the crying stuff and I have to lower my voice and all, I'm going to step back up there. Now really, this is what it used to be like, what happened and what it's like now. Well, the mere fact that I'm standing on the stage in a Methodist amphitheater on a Saturday night, for God's sakes, in Virginia, ought to give you some idea of what I'm like now. And I could tell you a couple of short stories that describe fully what I used to be like and what happened now. What I used to be like. Story about these two young boys that lived diagonally across the street from a house of ill repute. And in the evenings they would see these big boys go over there and knock on the door, and the lady would come to the door and they'd hand us some money. And they'd go in and stay in for varying periods of time and come out and walk down the street with a sort of a cat-eat-the-cabbage look on their face. And these kids got intrigued by this, and they wanted to find out what was going on over there. So they got a hold of 25 cents each. And one afternoon, in mid-afternoon, they went over and knocked on the door, and the lady came to the door, and she let them in, and they were standing inside the door, and she said, "What do you young punks want in here?" And one of the little boys said, "Well, we want to do whatever it is that the big boys do, that they seem to have so much fun." Well, they were standing right in front of her, facing each other, holding the little 25-cent pieces, and she took their money and grabbed them by the backs of their collars and just banged their heads together unmercifully, opened the door and threw them out. And they picked themselves up and walked off down the street, and about a half block down the way, one of them turned to the other and said, I don't believe I could have took $5 worth of that. And that's what it used to be like. I thought I was having a big time. And what happened, I guess I could describe that by a story about when they were settling the Old West. And of course the cowboys came first, and they wanted unfenced land, and then behind them came the farmers, and they wanted fenced land. And they were always at odds with each other, and the cowboys called the farmers sodbusters. And they got into some pretty heated arguments amongst them, and one Saturday afternoon, a couple of cowboys was out in front of the saloon. They had been drinking some of that red-eye whiskey, and they saw an old sodbuster coming into town on his mule, just trotting along. And this one cowboy says to the other one, says, "I'm going to have me some fun with that sodbuster." So he walked over to him when he got off his mule, and he said, "Sodbuster, can you dance?" And he said, "Well, no, sir, I can't really, to tell you the truth of business." And he said, "Well, you're going to dance now." And he took his six-shooter and he started shooting at the ground where that guy's feet were, and he danced. But he also could count. And after he heard that sixth shot go off and that empty click, he reached back across that mule and got that 30-06 he had slung off the saddle, and he wheeled it back around and he laid that thing right straight between that cowboy's eyes. And he said, "Cowboy, did you ever kiss a mule?" And the cowboy said, "No, but I always wanted to." Now, there's a lot of this grant money going around to study the problem of being an alcoholic, and they're spending a lot of money with these grants on trying to find out how a person becomes an alcoholic. And I'd like to get a hold of some of that grant money. I don't really need it, but I could use it. And the thing I like about the grant business is, you see, that's just an outright gift. You don't have to put up no matching funds. We don't ever stop to think about it, but that's what we're doing with the Serenity Press. See, we're saying, look, I got nothing to put up to match it. Just give it to me free or no strings. Grant me the Serenity and all that other stuff we're asking for. And I'd like to get a hold of some of that grant money that they're spending trying to find out how people become alcoholics, for the simple reason that I already know. I got to be an alcoholic by drinking. Now, there may be other ways, but if there is, I don't know about it. I mean, a lot of people seem to think that being a neurotic has got a lot to do with it. It might help. But just being neurotic by itself won't pull it off. I mean, I don't know. I don't want to make an issue out of anything, but I just think that it's important for me to stand up here and say that if you're going to be an alcoholic, you got to drink. And of course, while I'm on the subject, I mean, it brings up another thing that isn't completely understood, and that is, if you're going to be a member of Alcoholics Anonymous, you got to quit. Now, there's a lot of confusion about this. See, I got to be careful what I say, because in this day and age, it's dangerous. I think that's what Dennis was trying to get across last night, you know, when he referred to himself as an Irish non-Protestant. I'm sort of got the impression that he was afraid maybe some ethnic group might institute litigation if he was too concrete in his definition of what he really is. And I don't blame him, because you have to approach these things with care, you know, and I don't want to speak disparagingly of disadvantaged groups. But if there's one group that I have absolutely nothing but total pity for, it's those people that want to be an alcoholic and ain't got what it takes. Now, I know people that'll drink and puke and quit. Now, you can't get any place in there. I don't know how much you got to drink, but I mean, you got to give it a fair shake. And look, just everybody can't be an alcoholic. Now, in order to be an alcoholic, you have to have certain outstanding characteristics. You have to have courage and fortitude and determination and the capacity to envision a goal and let nothing keep you from achieving that goal. And just everybody can't pull it off. So I think it's important that I say, if you want to be a member of Alcoholics Anonymous, you got to quit. I don't think it's entirely the fault of the new people who come into AA. I don't think we tell them the whole truth sometimes. We get so tied up with all this hugging and kissing and lying and stuff like that, and we forget to tell them the real facts of life. Now, there's a requirement for membership in Alcoholics Anonymous, and I didn't make it up. It was here when I got here. The requirement for membership in AA is a desire to stop drinking. And a lot of people don't know what a desire is. A lot of people think that a desire is something that if you get it, it's all right. If you don't, it's all right too. Don't make any difference one way or another, you know. But that's not what a desire means. I mean, the desire is women know instinctively about what I'm trying to say. Any woman knows, and especially these Al-Anon women, know that attraction is better than promotion. And if you begin to get serious about them, that's what they do. See, they begin to lead you on and lead you on and lead you on, and put a whole lot of ideas in your head and get you all ready for action. And then one day they draw a line and say, And what they're really saying, if you ever stop to think about it, is, if you've decided that you want what I got, and are willing to go to any lengths to get it, then you're ready to take certain steps. Of course, at some of these we bought. We thought we could find an easier, softer way. You see, that's a desire. Desire is a screaming, memeing itch to get the thing you desire, and you do anything in God's green earth to get it. And I'll tell you another thing about a desire. If you're going to have a desire, you got to have some kind of general idea about what it is you're going to desire in the first place. I mean, you can't just go out and sit in a field and desire. Well, I've done a lot of drinking as a young kid and a lot of puking and all that kind of stuff, but I don't think that had anything to do with me becoming an alcoholic, except that it demonstrates the fact that I began to drink. But I come from a dumb little hick town, and I wanted to go off and be a success and a hero, and it never occurred to me that maybe you couldn't take a stupid kid like me out of the dumb town that I came from and put him in a different environment, and he may not be comfortable, but that's exactly what I did. See, I went off to college, and I had looked with such anticipation going off to college, and then when I got off there, I was miserable. I just didn't seem to belong. I was thrown with people that seemed to know so many things that I didn't know, and they had so many things that I didn't have. And this included money, but it wasn't limited to money, you know. And I was thrown with people that could talk about things like music and literature and art and architecture. And these were things that were hazy to me at the very best, and I just felt completely out of place. And I had so counted on being happy when I went off to college. And I remember one night shortly after I had got there, about 4 couples of us went out for a steak dinner, and we were seated around this round table, and the waitress came around asking everybody what kind of dressing they wanted on their salad. And when she got to me, I said crab. And well, see, I can tell right now I'm going to have trouble with y'all tonight. I mean, that's just what they did. You see, they laughed at me, and right then and there, when they laughed at me, I began to develop a lifestyle that lasted until long after I had been in Alcoholics Anonymous, and it was this, that whenever I said anything, I had to observe you closely to see how you understood it so I could decide how I meant it. And if you laughed, I was a comedian, and if you looked puzzled, I was a philosopher, and I began to look this way. And here's a young man in my 20s, I began to drink again, and it was different than it had been back there when I was a punk kid. I could take 2 or 3 drinks, and by golly, I didn't throw it up, and they had always told me that, you know, the reason people drink is to feel good. Well, I spent so much time throwing it up back there, I about decided that was a myth about the feeling good. But when I was off at college and I was a young man, I discovered quite accidentally one day that if you didn't drink it too fast, which I always did because I think I was a little nervous about it, and I always had to drink it with a chaser, you know. Who was it talking about? Father Hillary, talking about I don't know, somebody, a 9-to-1 martini. What the hell is a 9-to-1 martini? You know, sound like a baseball game to me, for crying out loud. From beginning to end, I drank out of the bottle, and I had to have a chaser. But I discovered here at college that if I drank it a certain way and tasted a certain way, that it was true, and in between the time I drank it and the time I threw up, there really was a brief interval in which I felt good, you know? And I liked the way I felt, and I'll tell you what happened was, when I'd take a drink or 2 or 3, the terrific thing that happened was that people changed. Now, normally if I looked at a group of people like you, only one of 2 thoughts, or both of them, would go through my mind. Do you threaten me, or could I use you? But with a drink or 2 or 3 in me, you changed. And I could tell by looking that you were saying to me, Tom, come on out here with us. You belong with us, and we want you. And I changed. I became charming. And I could go out amongst you and genuinely participate in the things that you did. And this is something that I couldn't do sober. Sober, I was just a drip. But by God, with a drink or 2 or 3 in me, I really had it. And so, you know, there's no accident as far as I'm concerned, looking back on it, as to what led me into becoming an alcoholic. Because I liked the way you looked, and I liked the way I felt. And it was a good way to live. And so I pursued it as a way of life. I like to drink with people, but I also like to drink when I was by myself. I used to like to take a drink or 2 or 3 and talk to myself in the mirror. I would call myself Sully Baby. And I'd say, Sully Baby, you're going to make it. You know, I never knew what I was going to make, but and some of this mirror conversation, I hate to say it, was in the nude. And then, when I was going to school, dental school at Loyola University in New Orleans, I lived in the 2nd floor of an apartment building, and outside was what in the daytime was a kind of a cruddy-looking scene, a couple of streetcar tracks and some scraggly old trees. But at night, with a drink or 2 or 3 in me, by God, it was beautiful. And I used to like to sit by that window and take a drink or 2 or 3 and just look out at the sheer beauty of the night. And sometimes I like to sit by that window and have a drink or 2 or 3, and I'd get sweet music on the radio and I'd cry. And I love to cry. Now, I don't mean bawl, but I mean just fill up right here with real hot, wet tears and have them course over my eyelids and down my cheeks. And I always did think that there was something beautiful about having a drink or two or three and feeling good and being sad. And I've often said that for me it was just as though I had been walking down the street and turned the corner and got lost, because all of a sudden this good life that I had wanted to build up, this success, this hero thing, I had achieved it all. I was married, had a beautiful wife, family, graduated from dental school, internship, some postgraduate work, basic sciences. I was in the regular army overseas on a sensitive diplomatic mission on the general staff, my own vehicle with my own personal chauffeur. All these things we say we alcoholics love: money, power, prestige. I had it all. And it all began to fall to pieces right in front of my eyes, and I never could connect what was happening with the fact that I was drinking. I don't know what. It just was that things began to happen and I didn't understand them. People started talking ugly about me. They said I smelled bad. Well, I'll admit some places in my drinking career I stopped bathing. Now, I didn't taper off, I just quit. But there's a reason for that. If you're a drinking man like me, you got to stay on the move. I mean, you can't stop too long, and you don't have any idea how long it takes to take a bath in the first place, you know. And so the rewards didn't anyways near come up to the efforts and the risks that were involved. So I just knocked it off, you know. And I'll tell you another thing about me and the way I practice the AA program. I didn't come into AA on Tuesday and start bathing on Wednesday either. Now, I've been in AA for 25 years, and this woman that I'm married to sitting right down there, ever since I've known her, I don't care what the hell's wrong with you, her answer is, why don't you take a good hot bath? And when you've been in here as long as I have, one thing you have to do is develop a set of relative values. I mean, you just can't live without it. And I've done that. And I'll take a bath. Now, let's get that straight. But I want to tell you that a good hot bath is way down on my scale of value. After 25 years, I can think of 13 things offhand just like that I'd rather do than take a good hot bath. And I'll tell you another thing, too. When I first came to Alcoholics Anonymous, you never had any trouble getting a seat at a meeting that I was at. There was always one in front and back and on either side of me, baby. Well, for one thing, when I came to AA, something was crawling on me. And I never could find it, and I spent an awful whole lot of time looking for it, and I never have found it. And towards the end of my drinking, I had developed some muscular spasms. I could be standing up here, and all of a sudden my arm would go out like that. Or I'd be walking down the street, and up I'd go my legs. And it never bothered me. As a matter of fact, I missed it when it went away. But I'd be sitting in those meetings looking for whatever it was that was crawling on me. And I'd have one of them spasms. And everybody would think I had found it, you know. And then they said my hand shook. Well, I knew my hand shook. And I had worked out a plan so that I could keep my hands from shaking up to 10 o'clock in the morning. And if you had come to me by 10 o'clock, you'd got the best treatment you could want it. Now, I never did like to get up early in the morning, but this wife of mine down here that I'm talking about, she's one of these people that believes that if you're going to be well, you have to eat well. And she wanted me to leave for work with a hearty breakfast under my belt. Well, in those days, I couldn't just sit down and eat. I mean, I had to get ready to eat. So as much as I hated to get up early in the morning, I had to get up early enough to get drunk up enough to eat breakfast. And breakfast would get me sober, and then I had to get drunk up enough to go to work, but not so drunk that I couldn't go to work. And this is work. This is what I'm talking about, that courage and fortitude and determination. And I ain't talking about no 40-hour week either, man. I'm talking about 365 days out of the year. Every night when I go to bed, I know exactly how I'm going to feel when I wake up in the morning, sick as a dog. But I had it fixed up there, worked out so that I could finally get moving. And like I said, I'd be in good shape up to 10 o'clock. And before I'd leave to go to work, I used to put a drop of Shalimar perfume on my tongue. And later on, they had some proceedings against me in the Army, and they asked a major that had an office next door to me how I smelled when I came to work in the morning, and he said he smelled like a drunken French whore. And I can remember a lot of times I'd have somebody cut on the inside from here over to here, and it'd come time to sew them back up, and the clock would strike 10. And I'd have to stick a lot of cotton in their mouth and go over in the corner and take a drink. And they were narrow-minded. Well, you see, you just like the colonel. I'm going to have to explain it to you, too. God, I spent a lot of time explaining the way it really was to him. You see, if I was a jackleg dentist, I would have let him go with the damn gums flapping in the breeze. But I have never been that sort of a fellow. I have always been a professional man with the highest ethical and moral standards. And I wouldn't dream of letting anybody leave my office without being properly sewed up. And the only way I could do it was take a drink. And I was the only dentist within 2,500 miles. And some of you are going to come up to me later on and say, man, I sure am glad I never run into you. And I just want you to know one thing. I'm damn glad I never run into you either. I had enough trouble with what I had going right then and there. So when I came back to the United States, I knew I was in some kind of a trouble, and I went to an Army doctor that was well thought of, and I told him I thought I might be an alcoholic. I have no idea where I got that word from. I was the captain in the dental corps at the time, and he said to me, he said, I'm glad you came to me. Just last week I cured a major general. So they put me in a hospital and stuck a lot of needles in me and out me and up me. And the cure didn't take. And for a long time I thought it was because I was just a captain. And I'm not trying to be funny. I can remember the times I'd be walking down the street, you know, and I'd say to myself, man, if I was just somebody else, all this wouldn't be happening to me. And I got the same kind of help you got. They said to me, why don't you drink like Bill? Bill's a bald-headed brother-in-law of mine. Like I say, I've been sober for 25 years in AA, and I feel tonight about Bill exactly as I did 30 years ago. I don't ever want to do nothing like Bill. And besides, how do you drink like Bill? Then they used to tell me, get right with God. Well, I got the same question tonight, too, that I had 30 years ago. How do you do it? How do you do it? Well, look, you don't have to pay any attention really to what I'm saying up here, because if you don't agree with what I'm saying, you got a constitutional right to be wrong. But I'm going to stand here and tell you that I don't believe that Alcoholics Anonymous has got the answer to your problem. And the reason I say that is there's no chapter in the book titled There's an Answer. The title of the chapter is There's a Solution. And that's what we've got. We've got a time-tested, experience-proved solution, and you've got to put you in the solution and come up with your own answer. And I sometimes think that this may be the true glory of our fellowship, because I honestly believe that the trouble with the whole stupid world, not just limited to the area of alcoholism, but surely including that, but the trouble with the whole ball of wax is that every Tom, Dick, and Harry that you run into has got the answer to your problem, and they don't even know what your dumb problem is. And it may be our true blessing that we don't pretend to have an answer, but what we have is, I say again, a time-tested, experience-proved solution, and you got to put you in the solution and come up with your own answer. And then they tried to scare me into not drinking. And I just don't believe that you can scare an alcoholic into not drinking. You tell me, you know, you're going to die if you don't quit drinking. Well, that reminds me of a story that I have absolutely no business at all telling, but I'm going to do it anyway. It's about a little boy that his mama caught him playing with himself, and she gave him a doomsday lecture, and she told him, she said, that'll make you go blind. And he said, well, can I keep on doing it just till I have to wear glasses? Well, you see, that's almost the definition of being an alcoholic. If it ever really gets bad, I'll quit. And so I lost all these things that I had worked so desperately to gain, and I could take you down the road with me if I wanted to. And it's really kind of interesting going all the way down, but I don't have time tonight, and maybe someday you might be able to invite me back someplace, and I'll tell you that little journey down into nowhere, but it really doesn't make any difference. You know that I ain't standing up here tonight because I'm a dentist. You know that's for darn sure. And that's all I really want you to know. Stu asked me, he said, do you want me to introduce you as doctor? I said, for God's sakes, no. That's not, you see, that's just the way I make a living. And it ain't a bad way to make a living. You know the truth, man. And everybody's got to make a living, you know, and so I'm glad I got that, and I can make the kind of living I make. But I don't gain my identity from being a doctor, for God's sake. My identity derives from the fact that I'm an alcoholic. This is the basic thing about me. See, you could take the doctor bit away from me, but you can never take the alcoholic part away from me. I'm an alcoholic forever. And so this is the source of my identity as an alcoholic, and I just wanted you to be sure and understand that I didn't come here to give you a lecture on oral health. I lost everything I had. I lost the job, the home, the money, the car, the wife, the family, and all of it. I was reduced to the level of a street bum on the streets of the city of San Antonio, and because there was nothing left to do, I went back to this town, Lake Providence, Louisiana, that I had left years before to be a success and a hero, and I hitchhiked into Lake Providence one Labor Day weekend on a Tasty Bird poultry truck. And I went back there and lived with my mother and became the town drunk. Now, we don't have town drunks anymore because the culture has changed. We don't have downtown areas to have them in anymore. I mean, everything moved out to the suburbs. So we have condominium drunks and parking lot drunks and shopping mall drunks and supermarket drunks and all this kind of stuff. And we are a queer bunch of people, I'm telling you this. I mean, I could say we're unique, but I'd rather say we're queer. I mean, we're queer ducks. I never have really known an anonymous alcoholic in my whole life. You can almost define the difference between an alcoholic and a drunk by the way they react, say, when a policeman shows up. A drunk will go hide. An alcoholic, if the policeman is looking that way and the drunk's on this side, he'll make it a point to go get around in front of the cop so that the cop can't help but see him. And it don't bother us one bit to get drunk in parking lots and shopping malls and condominiums and whatever other cultural additions we have in this day and age. It don't faze us 1 iota. And then we decide to come to Alcoholics Anonymous and start living decent, straight lives and getting our lives straightened up. And the very first thing we say is, shh, don't tell nobody. So don't worry, we ain't gonna tell on you. And I went back there and I stayed with my mother and became the town drunk, and then she died and I was all alone in this big house all by myself. And I was sleeping in the back of the house in a little old dirty, filthy room. I used to call it the recovery room. It was where she hid me when company came. And it had a little old Hollywood bed that was about this high up off the floor, and I was sleeping on it. Dirty, filthy. Everything in the house was dirty and filthy. And I used to fall out of that bed, and it never did bother me falling out of that bed. You know, it didn't matter if I woke up in the bed or woke up on the floor. I don't ever remember waking up in between, but I don't think that made any difference either. I mean, it just... And one night, I guess it was the night I say it was, but back in those days, you know, if the clock said 3 o'clock, it didn't mean much to me. It could have been 3 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and the only way I could have told would have been go to the window and look out, and it just was too much effort to do that. So I'd stay there sometimes and wonder whether it was 3 o'clock in the morning or 3 o'clock at night, and I don't really know for sure, but I've been saying night for all these years, I might as well stick with it. And I fell out of bed and woke up on the floor, and it was like a light had been turned on, and I guess I had what you'd call a spiritual awakening. At any rate, I had what I consider to be the deepest, most profound thought I had ever had in my whole life as an adult. And that thought was, what's the use of getting back in bed? Now, I didn't have anything against it, but just what was the point? And all of a sudden, you know, the light stayed on long enough that all of a sudden it became clear to me that that's all my life consisted of, was getting in bed and falling out. And I hurt when I lay there on that floor, and I hurt in every way I possibly could hurt. I hurt inside, outside, and in all ways. And as I lay there on that floor, I'd like to tell you that I prayed. But if I did, you'd ask me who I prayed to, and I wouldn't be able to tell you. Because I didn't have anybody to pray to at that time. Except I'm not entirely sure that it's necessary to believe in God in order to pray. Nor am I entirely sure that prayer is of itself necessarily a matter of words spoken or unspoken, but that many, many times it is simply a matter of total inner attitudes and feelings. And that night as I lay on the floor, I was earnestly willing that the direction of my life be changed, and that's about all I can say about it. And I didn't give a hoot which direction the change took. I just was tired of going the way I was going, that's all. And one thing I know for sure is I never asked for sobriety, and I'll tell you why. I never suspected that that might be what I needed. I really and truly believe as I lay on that floor that night, if it ever dawned on me that what I needed was sobriety, I'd ask for it. But I just earnestly wish that the direction of my life be changed. And I got up off that floor, and I'm looking back on it now. I didn't know this at the time. But I did walk around the house, big old house. And all the crud and the crap was in the same place that it was when I fell out of bed. The dirty dishes in the refrigerator, the grease and the scum in the sink, the cobwebs and the dust and the dirt and the filth. Friends and enemies at the same time, and I would have gone any place. Now, I had had some previous exposure to Alcoholics Anonymous, but I didn't understand what was going on here. I really thought it was some kind of church, Dennis. And you know as well as I know that we had the only true religion, and I couldn't afford to get mixed up with any folk church back in those days. And besides, I kind of thought that your goal in life was to teach people like me how to drink. And I never could get anybody to teach me how to drink, so I drifted away. But this guy came by and asked me if I'd go, and I said, yeah. And this guy, let me tell you, he didn't have nothing. I got 2 college degrees. Of course, my sponsor straightened me out about this right quick in Alcoholics Anonymous when he pointed out that rectal thermometers got degrees. But this guy wasn't anywhere near as intelligent as I was, and that's another thing I love, this intelligent business. You know, you always hear that, and you hear that anywhere you go in Alcoholics Anonymous, that alcoholics are above average intelligence. Now, you don't hear it any place except in AA. I belong to a lot of professional and scientific societies, and I go to their meetings and their seminars, and sometimes I sit on the edge of my seat with bated breath, waiting for some learned scholar to announce, did you know that alcoholics have above average intelligence? But you never hear it any place except in Alcoholics Anonymous. We tell that crap to each other, you know. Well, now, minimum definition of intelligence, as far as I'm concerned, is the ability to learn from experience. And I got a dog can do that. But this guy, he wasn't intelligent. He didn't have no... I don't believe this guy finished high school. He didn't have nothing going for him except sobriety. That's the only thing he had going. And so I went to Alcoholics Anonymous, and I did not come like they say you're supposed to come. I hear a lot of these people say when you walk in that door, you got to tell the truth. Well, I just don't understand that, because when I came to Alcoholics Anonymous, I didn't know what the truth was. For one thing, I get irritated sometimes when people call alcoholics liars. Now, I may not have told what you thought was the truth, but that don't give you any right to be calling me a liar, because what I was doing was not lying. I mean, it was creative description. And innovative explanations. I mean, I wouldn't just, a lot of times I would not tell the truth when the truth would be better. But I like to be creative and entertaining and oh God, I'm sorry I said that. And don't y'all laugh too much now, because I don't want nobody on the committee to think I'm entertaining, you know. I might get run out of here after all tonight. But anyway, I had to stay here long enough to find out what the truth was, and then a little bit longer to see whether I wanted to tell it or not. But I'll tell you one thing, I swallowed a hook, line, and sinker. And I'm not trying to be critical. I just want to flat tell you I don't understand this crap that they're telling people nowadays about going to 90 meetings in 90 days, because I'll tell you what, I don't think you should ever be goal-oriented in Alcoholics Anonymous. Now, this is just my conviction. Anybody that's got a goal in AA is a dead duck as far as I'm concerned. Because my question is, you go to 90 meetings in 90 days, what the hell are you going to do on day 91? Now, my sponsor simply told me to go to a lot of meetings and drink a lot of coffee. And I'm going to tell you, I still go to a lot of meetings, but I believe I've been here long enough to quit drinking so damn much coffee. But it's worked so good, I'm afraid to quit. And so I keep slugging that coffee and going to meetings, and I go to 2 meetings a week with some of the dumbest people you ever saw in your life. I hear these people get up and say, I belong to the greatest group in the world. Well, so do I. I mean, any group that could keep me sober for 25 years got to be good. But sometimes it's a pain in the you-know-what to go down there and sit down with those people. I mean, they say some of the dumbest things that you ever heard in your life. I mean, a guy can have an earth-shattering problem and go down there to that dumb group that I belong to and lay out all the details of it, and some idiot sitting down at the end of the table will look down his nose at you and say, well, turn it over. sometimes, you know, I think I wish I had a brickbat to throw at that guy. I knew all about that turnover business while I was getting dressed to go to the meeting. That was when I was saying I wasn't going. And I had trouble with the program. I mean, I didn't do the program like other people do. I wrote a long inventory. I didn't have much trouble with that because I was writing about me, and God is the most interesting person in the world. So, you know, I couldn't hardly stop once I got started. And I hear people griping about the fifth step. You know, they say, well, I don't mind admitting it to myself and to God, but I don't want to tell any other human being. Well, let me give you an example of how this program was just made for me. When I was about 8 or 9 years old, I was an altar boy in the Catholic Church. See, I was saving that till we got further along. And one Sunday, I stole a buck off the collection plate. Well, I got caught and punished. But somehow or another, I couldn't accept that punishment, and I carried this realization that I had stolen this dollar off the collection plate with me around the world. And I was in the regular army, and many a time, and wherever it might have been, Rome, Paris, Tokyo, whatever, just as I was about to go to sleep, up would pop that buck. And I ain't saying it made me drink, but I am saying it kept me from having any kind of meaningful serenity for many years. And I can't tell you how delighted I was when I found out that the priest had died. There was only 3 people who knew, the priest, me, and my mother. And he was gone, and God, I was glad. And I watched my mother die, and I'm not saying it was the only thought that was on my mind, but I'm telling you, it crossed my mind that now I'm home safe, now nobody knows, except me. And I'm going to carry it to the grave with me. Nobody will ever find out about that. And then I came to Alcoholics Anonymous, and I ran into some of you loose-mouthed people. Well, that's the fact. Some of you people will sit around and in casual conversation tell each other things that no sane human being would admit to his confessor or attorney. And I decided I'm going to tell somebody about stealing that buck. And then I found out something else about Alcoholics Anonymous that a lot of outside people don't know, people in AA know. It's almost impossible to tell somebody what a rat you are in AA. You start out to tell somebody what a rat you are, they say, wait a minute, let me tell you what a rat I am. And a lot of people look, say, where 4 AAs are at the table and all the talking's going on, and they think a lot of communication is taking place. Oh, there's 4 monologues taking place. Everybody's just sitting around coasting along in neutral, waiting for somebody to take a deep breath so they can dive in, submarine in, and take over. And I used to leave the house at night and say, tonight, you know, I'm going to tell somebody about stealing that doll. And I'd get out there and I'd say, I want to tell you about something. They said, wait, let me tell you about me. And I used to get angry about it. You know, I remember one night pounding my fist down like that, and I said, by God, I'm going to tell somebody about stealing that dollar if I have to keep coming back to AA till I get gray-headed. So I was delighted when I could find somebody that would sit down and shut up and let me tell him all these things about myself that I had always wanted to tell somebody. And I knew I was taking a big chance. I was well aware of the fact that he might stop me in mid-recitation and say, well, we deal with the dregs of humanity, but we really didn't have people like you in mind. But of course he didn't do that. He let me put the whole pile of crap right there on his desk. And then when he was through with it, he said, well, you know we loved you. And for the first time in my life, I had been unconditionally accepted. And of course, there's a four-letter word for unconditional acceptance, and that's love. You see, I didn't have to make A's. I didn't have to be a good boy. All I was another human being in trouble, and I'd come to another human being and laid the whole pile of bull out there, right in front of him for him to inspect it all, and he unconditionally accepted me. He accepted me just exactly as I was. And one night I went to call on a guy, you know, and I got there a little too late. I was doing a little 12-step work, and the guy had a drink or too much before I got there, and he was a little short guy, and he was in his, you know, underwear and socks, and he was bald-headed, and he had a little derby hat on the side table, and when I had come in, his wife and about 6 kids had run around and hid under the window, and I knew they were out there watching everything that took place, and I often wondered to myself what the general population would think if they saw some of us when we were in operation. And I knew I'd lost this guy. I knew I'd come too late. He'd had a drink too many, and all of a sudden, while I was talking to him, I saw something happen that I've seen many a time in Alcoholics Anonymous, and it's the most glorious thing. It's enough to keep anybody coming back and coming back and coming back. A light went on in his eyes. I know he didn't understand what I was saying, but a light went on in his eyes, and he stood up in that bed, and I should have known better when he stood up in the bed, because he started bouncing up and down like this, you know. But I guess I was so enchanted with what I was saying that I didn't notice, and all of a sudden he leaped out of the bed, and he wrapped his legs around my waist and his arms around the back of my neck. He had put on that brown felt hat, and with his nose right here, he said, "Do you love me?" And I said, "Yeah, I love you." And when I was leaving, his wife said to me, she said, "I don't see how you could say you love me." And I said, "You know, I'm not sure that a mother loves a newborn, wrinkled, red, squalling baby so much for what he is as for what she knows he can become. But she doesn't say to him, 'Go away, kid, and come back when you're 3 and you're cute.' She accepts him as he is, then and there, and offers herself as a channel through which the child can grow and blossom and flower and one day mature into that which God from all eternity intended him to be. And isn't this what we do in Alcoholics Anonymous? Don't we go out to the poor old drunk who's laying there and says, 'I can take it or leave it alone'? And of course you and I know that's the tragedy of his life, that he can't take it and he can't leave it alone. And that's what we do, you see. We offer ourselves as a channel through which this person can grow and finally become that which God intended him or her to be. And ain't I glad that I ain't God? Because I look out the window of my office sometimes and we got a peach tree and a pear tree out there. And you know those things that are left to me? I'd like sometimes to see the peach tree bearing pears and the pear tree bearing peaches. I'm just that kind of guy. But the greatest glory that a peach tree can give to God is to become a good peach tree. And the greatest glory that a pear tree can give is to become a good pear tree. And the biggest thing that I can do in life is to become as fully Tom as I can become. And I hear people talking about this 6th and 7th step, you know, about all these defects. Okay, I ain't going through the steps. I know what you're sitting out there thinking. Man, that guy is completely out of control, you know. Here he is, sweating out time, and he's got hooked up in the steps, and ain't even going in order. And man, we sure enough going to set the clock up tonight. But anyway, I know where I am, and we're going to be through in another 45 minutes. And, but this business of being entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character and humbly ask Him to remove our shortcomings, you know, and it reminds me of a story about this lady that asked a famous sculptor if it wasn't a big deal making beautiful statues, and he said, no, not really. Said, all you do is get her a hunk of marble and chip away what you don't want. And see, that's all we do in Alcoholics Anonymous is we begin to chip away what it is that keeps us from becoming the person that we're meant to be. And that's why I say I don't think we should ever be goal-oriented in AA. Because it's never what we are, never what we are, never what we are. It's only and always what we're becoming. That's the big deal about it. A lot of us think that life can be static, like a fixed frame in a movie. And it's not. Life is like driving on a freeway and on an interchange, and by God, you better be in the right lane when you come to an off-ramp or you're in deep trouble. And you don't have time to look around and take your leisure. And that's what life is all about. It's dynamic and it's ongoing and it's a case of becoming. And let me ask you a fair question. What I think is a fair question. Doesn't there come a time in Alcoholics Anonymous, perhaps, when we begin to glimpse at least partially who it is that we're meant to be? To me, it's sort of like flying a light plane at night when the clouds are low and not too heavy. And you fly in a cloud and you fly out of it, in the distance you see the airport lights, and you're back in the cloud again. But you see, you've already seen the goal out there somewhere. You're back in the cloud, and it's not all clear, but you know it's out there. And so you keep going to it. How do you go to it? You go to it a day at a time. See, a day at a time, a day at a time, a day at a time. It's another thing about the danger of being goal-oriented. We have a lot of things in life that we do to make it convenient for us to live together as groups. But we have to learn that a lot of these things are just things that we make up. Like tomorrow, there ain't no such thing as tomorrow. Ain't nobody in this room ever seen tomorrow. Ain't nobody in this room ever going to see tomorrow. I used to fly people back and forth across the equator. And when we'd cross the equator, we'd tell them we're crossing the equator now. And they'd all look out the airplane window. You know, I knew what they was looking for, see if there was a white line out there, you know, but... Tomorrow is just a convenient term that we use for whatever the heck it's going to be when now comes. And that maybe is the greatest thing that I've ever learned in my whole life. And I learned that right here in Alcoholics Anonymous. You see, is I only live my life right now, N-O-W, now. And I talked up in northern Minnesota about this time last year, and I talked for 82 minutes. And I had one of the best friends I ever had in my whole life was taking me. And after it was over, he said, man, I only had a 90-minute cassette and only had 8 minutes left. You know, he said that 100 times if he said it once. And I thought to myself, well, what the heck are you griping about? You had 8 minutes left. But I thought about that a lot, and I realized that that's too long for anybody to talk. I don't care who they are. And I got to thinking about it, and it occurred to me that maybe I don't know all that much about making an AA talk as I think I do. But I do know how to end one.
Tom, on behalf of the Blackstone Board of Trustees, I want to present this gift for coming and sharing with us. Thank you.
Thank you.
One last thing, remember to turn your clocks forward tonight. Tom, we'll end it with the Lord's Prayer. All join hand, please. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, power, and glory, forever and ever. Amen.
Thank you. I enjoyed that.
Thank you. That was super.